But we've got between now and the end of the election on November 6th to make sure that all of our fellow members are voting. And in case anybody wonders why it matters, I would like to take you down memory lane to 2010, and the last time we were facing a competitive election for governor, and we see what happened. The polls were very close that year. John Kasich beat Ted Strickland by less than 2 percentage points. 77,000 votes separated them statewide. But the impact of that election had profound impact on every single one of us and every single one of our schools. So we know as soon as John Kasich took office, $1.9 billion in education funding cuts in that first state budget. We knew as John Kasich took office, a doubling down on support for private school options, including vouchers for families that were sending their kids to religious and other private schools, and also this explosion of support for charter schools, which has a direct negative impact on all of us. Upper Arlington, even though you get next to nothing in terms of state foundation support, like a few $100s per student, you're losing $6,000 plus for every single kid who ends up going to ECOT, who ends up going to Ohio Virtual Academy, who ends up going to another one of these charter schools. And not a single one of those schools can hold a candle to the work that you do with your students right here in this district. And that was happening statewide, and we know what happened with the whole ECOT scandal, because there was this ideology that somehow if we privatize everything, it's going to be better. No, that was an ideology pushed by people that wanted to make a profit for themselves, like Bill Lauder, who's living large in Key West right now at our expense. So what else happened after the 2010 election? We know that we've been dealing with a whole lot of education policy madness that's all focused around this whole standardized testing insanity. The desire that if we test kids more, then we tie that to teacher evaluation, and then that somehow will make us better. If we test kids more, then we tie it to school district report cards. And you guys always get good report cards, okay? But is that really helping? Is that like quest for the A or the B, whatever it is? I mean, like, is that really helping your kids? Is that helping you work in your classroom? But that is the policy stuff that we saw pushed forward. Third grade reading guarantee. You know, how about we trust our teachers to make good decisions in terms of where students need to be appropriately placed and supported? Instead, we have to have the state stepping in and telling us how to do our jobs with that. And then something that doesn't directly affect us in districts like this, but House Bill 70 and this whole idea that when a district is struggling, especially high poverty districts, in places like Youngstown and Lorain and now East Cleveland, when they don't hit their test score targets, then the state's going to step in and take over. The state's going to step in and say, we don't want your school board to have a say anymore. We don't want your community to have a say anymore. And we're going to take away some of the rights you have in your contract. All of those things, the direct result of that election. And some of you probably also remember Senate Bill 5, right? A full frontal attack on our collective bargaining rights. This idea that we're overpaid, we're underworked, and so the state's going to step in and they're going to take away our voice. Now, fortunately, we all stood strong. We defeated that madness. But we've been playing defense ever since John Kasich's been in that governor's office. We have a chance now to change the direction. And what I'm really excited about is that the choice we have right now is really, really clear. We have on the one hand Rich Cordray from right here in Franklin County, who's running for governor. He's our recommended candidate. He's someone who's always been a champion for public education. Going back to the time that he served in the legislature, as county treasurer when I first knew him, and by the way, as local president in Worthington and also as president of Central at the time, he reached out to me, he reached out to other local association leaders, he reached out to superintendents and treasurers and said, what can I do in my capacity to help you? And our answer was, make sure that you collect the taxes that people owe. And he did. And he really used the power of his office to make sure that everybody was paying their fair share and schools were getting what they deserved. Then as Attorney General and as State Treasurer and as the nation's top consumer watchdog, he has always been somebody who has our back. He's somebody who believes in us. He believes in public education. He's a product, proudly, of the Southwestern public schools. He grew up in Grove City. His kids went to school in the Southwestern School District. You might know that Rich, being kind of a nerdy, smart guy, won Jeopardy 5 times. And he's the first person that gives credit to his teachers in his public schools for putting him in a position to be able to do that. And Michelle, I think you've heard me say this, that was 5-time Jeopardy champion before they put term limits on Jeopardy champions. So, you know, who knows? He might still be on there now, you know, if they hadn't cut him off. But he really believes in us. And as he put together his education plan, which starts with having a constitutional school funding system, making sure that we're holding charter schools accountable, making sure that we're shutting down for-profit online scam operations like ECOT, making sure that we're rolling back testing to federal minimums, investing in high quality pre-K for 3- and 4-year-olds to make sure that all of our kids are coming to us ready to learn in kindergarten, investing in higher education to make college more affordable, making sure that we are rolling back the testing requirements as they're connected to evaluation and school report cards. That is all part of what he's committed to doing. And what's really cool about that is not just his plan, it's how he came up with this plan. He came up with this plan by coming to us and saying, what do you think? And put together a group of educators. Becky Higgins, our state president, was on that team that helped write that plan. Because unlike John Kasich, unlike Betsy DeVos, unlike other politicians of that ilk, he doesn't view teachers as the problem. He views teachers as the solution that's going to move our state forward. So I feel really good about him. And I also believe that the contrast is pretty clear with his opponent. Mike DeWine, a 42-year-old, he's a lot older than 50, sorry. 42-year office holder, been around a long time, you know, honorable person, good family man. But on our issues, he's on the wrong side. He's always been a champion of school choice, of vouchers and charters. During his time as Attorney General, he stood in the background, did next to nothing as Bill Lager, you know, pillaged the state treasury in our local school district. And only when it became politically expedient did he decide to step up and file a lawsuit after the Ohio Department of Education had already done the heavy lifting to try to get some of that money back. During his time in Congress, voted for some of the steepest education funding cuts in our nation's history. He's somebody who is aligned, supported by the same people that think that Betsy DeVos is doing a great job as Secretary of Education. That's not what we need. And by the way, contrast Richard Cordray, who came to us asking for our input, our ideas on his education plan. Mike DeWine didn't even bother to respond to our repeated invitations to come and screen with us and talk to us and share his vision for education and ask what we thought. So we got very clear choice. We know that the stakes are really, really high. And we also know that this is an election that when it comes down to it, the outcome is going to be determined by who shows up. So it's an off-year election. We know that most of our members, based on the polling that we did over the summer, are very inclined to support Rich Cordray. They know about him, they're going to vote for him. But the problem is about 30% of our members who vote in presidential election years don't bother to vote in non-presidential election years like this one. And I will argue that who's governor has way more direct influence on what happens in our classrooms than who's the president. So we need to help people understand that this is not an election that anybody can afford to sit at. The other thing that we know is that we have, while our members are very inclined to support Rich, when we look at our households, so you include the spouses and adult children and siblings and parents and other people that significant others, it's much more of a 50-50 race, just like the overall race. And so where we have a real opportunity to persuade people to vote our way is in those personal conversations in our homes. Now, I'm looking around, and what I see here is very reflective of what I see everywhere else I go in OEA, and that is, surprise, surprise, we are a predominantly female association. We have a lot more women in our profession than we have men, which means that when we're talking about households, think about a lot of those spouses. And some of you might know somebody like this where the spouse sometimes cancels out the educator's vote. We can't let that happen this time. And if you know folks that might, in your own families or in your own circle of friends, in your own networks, who oftentimes kind of go the other way and they're like, no, I this time you got to tell them we can't let that happen. If you care about my ability to bargain good wages to support our family and send our kids to college, then you need to vote with me for Rich this time. If you care about our continued ability to bargain good health care benefits, then you need to be with me. If you care about my sanity as an educator, and you don't want me coming home the next 8 years the way I've been coming home kind of mad the last 8 years, then you need to vote with me. And if you do, and if we all have those conversations, we're going to be successful. We got 21 days. And there are several things that we can do to get involved. And one of them is, I want you to have this same conversation back in your buildings. Have a 10-minute meeting. Let people understand what's going on. Share the information so that we ensure that everybody has the facts that they need to make informed decisions. And there's a lot of tools that you can share with folks on. One is we've got a great social media presence. Educators for Ohio has a Facebook page, and we're sharing information all the time on that. We encourage people to go on Facebook, get information, share information. OhioBallot.com is a good way to find out who our recommended candidates are for other offices besides the governorship. And by the way, it's not just Democrats. It's Democrats and Republicans who support us on our issues. And sometimes when there isn't a real clear preference on that, we take no position, like here in the 24th House District race. You got two pretty strong candidates who are running against each other. Make your own decision. We're not going to tell you how to vote in every single race. But when we do know that there is a clear preference, we tell you who that is. OhioBallot.com is a good place to find out who those folks are. Also want to encourage each of you, if you haven't yet, and this is something I can take back with me today, fill out this card. And this card is basically saying that you personally are pledging to vote for public education friendly candidates, including Rich Cordray for governor, and that you will talk to at least 3 other people and encourage them to do the same thing. And when I say 3 other people, I'm not talking about the 3 other people that are in this room right now filling out the card. That doesn't quite get us to where we need to be. But it's that person who's like not sure how they want to vote, or it's that person who doesn't need to be convinced on how to vote, but definitely needs to be convinced on whether to vote. I know one of my 3, at the top of my list, is my 18-year-old daughter, who I'm going to see in a little while, who's at Ohio University, and I had to badger her in order to make sure that she was updating her voter registration, but I'm going to make sure that she's paying attention, that she casts that ballot before the end of this election. Same thing with my older daughter, same thing with my siblings, same thing with other folks that I know who need a little bit extra nudging. So asking you to do that. There's also some other things that you can do as far as helping us get the word out. And our focus is not on talking to the general public. It's nothing particularly intimidating. It's just talking to other members. We have phone banks that are scheduled Tuesdays and Thursdays for the next couple of weeks. Our headquarters downtown I just came from there, so it's a 15, 20-minute drive away. 5 to 7 the next couple Tuesdays and Thursdays. That's one way to get involved. We have already completed our scheduled group canvases, but if you're interested in knocking doors, that's one of the things that I'm doing. We can send you a list, and you use this like handy app on your phone called the Minivan. I've got a couple of turfs in Clintonville. I don't know if any of you live in Clintonville, but there are lots and lots of OEA members that live right next to each other in Clintonville, so it's really easy to walk, going door to door, having conversations, and when people aren't home, leaving some information. The bottom line is we got to get the word out any possible way we can. And with your help, I feel very, very confident that we're going to be successful.